Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokemon Emerald video. Today I will be using a very forgotten and not so well liked Pokemon from Generation 2. Aipom has never been that popular and he was lucky to even get an evolution in Generation 4. Unfortunately, that did very little for his popularity and is still one of the most forgotten Pokémons in the franchise. Let's see if today he will be able to handle the Juan region and maybe redeem himself. As far as the rules go, I can only use my starter in combat, I can't use any items from my bag in battle, I can't raise my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. At first, I was very impressed by the size of Aipom's move pool. It learns a lot of moves from many different types, so I was hoping to not have that hard of a time. Unfortunately, he does not learn any great boosting moves. Sure, he has agility, but his speed is already good enough, so that will not be very useful. It would have been much better to at least have Bulk Up or Calm Mind. The nature I got is not very good either, increasing the speed is quite useless and the special attack drop could hurt me especially later in the game. At least for the first few fights, the normal attacks are good enough to get through them with no resets. The problems start at Roxanne though, because her Pokémons are a bit too hard to take down even at level 21, so I had to go back and grind some more until I reached level 25. Here Aipom learns a quite interesting move in a Tickle. I don't think I have ever used this one. It lowers both attack and defense for the enemy Pokémon by one stage. While not crazy good, it is quite useful for the fight against Roxanne, since her Pokémons have very good defense and use their physical attack. Surprisingly enough, that was what I needed to get through Roxanne. Her Nosepass starts the fight with a bunch of Hardens that sure negate the defense drop from Tickle, but the attack drop still sticks, so by the end we are left with a very weak Nosepass that sure will live a few turns, but unable to do much damage to me, unless he gets a crit, but fortunately that does not happen. Overall, this might have been the most interesting fight of the game, unfortunately, because from here things get a bit dull. The next fight is against May, but since I am so overleveled, even Scratch is good enough to one-shot all of her Pokémons. From here I could have taken on Brawly, but I do not think I have a chance to defeat him at the moment, so I moved on to Slateport, where I had to defeat the Team Aquagrants. Those guys are a complete different story, and once again, thanks to my extra levels, I am strong enough to one-shot all of their Pokémons with just a measly scratch. Once we are done with them, we of course have to listen to Archie for a little while until we are free to leave and train some more before fighting the next fight against May. This one is not all that different from the previous ones. I was hoping Combusken would be more of a challenge with a double kick, but instead wastes its turn by using Focus Energy. After defeating May 2, we can make our way to Mauville, where we have to take on the next gym leader. Watson could also be a problem, mostly because Magneton resists everything I can use against it and will surely paralyze me, so that could be a problem. As usual, I try to mitigate the thing with the cherry berry, but unfortunately that's not enough to keep me unparalyzed. Tickle proves to be still very useful as I can lower Magneton's defense. This time paralysis really decided to mess with me and I got fully paralyzed 3 times in a row. That's a 1 in 64 chance to happen. Not very lucky. Things were not looking great once Manectric came out, especially because I just barely did not have enough damage to one-shot him after the berry, so things got even longer with the potions. At least I paid my paralysis debt earlier, so I do not get fully paralyzed against it, and that allowed me to win without having to reset. Now that we can use Rock Smash out of combat, we can explore more of the region until we reach Meteorfall Caves, where we find the 2 teams. From here we can move on to the volcano, where we end up meeting Maxi, who is about to blow it up to awaken Groudon. Of course we cannot let him do that, so we end up having to fight him. Since I am mostly a physical attacker, these kind of fights with intimidate Pokémons are still annoying. Fortunately I can mitigate it a little bit with Tickle and Shockwave. By combining the two, the fight against Maxi was not that bad and I was very far from a loss. After stopping this team leader, we have to climb down the volcano and face the next gym leader. Flannery could be a problem, since her fire moves might hurt quite a bit, but fortunately I have Dig on my side, which is super effective against her fire types. Their Camerupt knows Magnitude, which can hit me while I am underground, but I don't think it doubles the damage like Earthquake. Surprisingly, that was not really the problem, but the main issue was Thorugh. Because of her massive physical defense, I was unable to defeat her very quickly, and I of course got paralyzed. This led to a bit of comedy as I kept getting paralyzed in the second turn of Dig, and I was unable to finish off the Torkoal for quite a while, until RNG finally smiled upon me and with one last Dig hit the Torkoal is defeated too, and we can earn the hit badge. Now we have to tie up some loose ends like Brawly, and since we are extremely overleveled, the fight against him was more of a slaughter. Even though Secret Power is not crazy powerful, it is way more than enough to one-shot everything he has. And so, in no time at all, we also have his badge. Now we only have our dad left, and for the fight against him I was a bit scared. My attack is not very high, and his Pokémons are decently tanky with good physical moves. This time around, I do end up getting countered by Slacking, but since my attack is so low, I do survive the hit. That's unusual. Now you might think that yeah, sure, you survived, but you only have 42 HP, so anything will defeat you immediately. And I was of the same idea too while playing the game. But somehow, someway, Aipom found a way to survive this ordeal. To finish off Slacking, I used the usual Dig strategy, so he could not be able to hit me, and then I was able to leave a hit from Vigoroth, but my HP ended up in the red, so surely Lainon will finish me off, except not. One hit is barely enough to destroy him. And with that, we have earned the normal badge in the first attempt. Kind of impressive. Now, by being able to use Surf out of combat, we can explore more of the region until we reach the Weather Institute, where we find the usual stuff with Shelly and the scientists being held hostages. Of course, she is not really a threat, and we can defeat her in a couple of turns. Next, we have our rival May, and this time she is a bit more challenging. Her Pokémons are kind of strong, but I sort of have an answer for them. Even though Combusken is able to leave a hit and use double kick against me, the damage is very pitiful, and I don't know why I was even worried about it. Once we are done with Lombre 2, we can move on to the next town over, where we have to fight the 6th gym leader. While Aipom cannot learn that many special moves, and his special attack is very low, made even worse by the nature, Thunderbolt is still going to be quite useful in this fight. Particularly for Pelipper, since it is 4 times super effective, and for Skarmory, since my other moves are not able to do anything to it. For the rest of the team, I could just spam Secret Power, and eventually they all fell down. Also, can I point out that it's a bit weird that this Altaria has an Oran Berry, where stuff like the Makuhita from Brawly has a citrus one. Moving on, we have one last fight against our rival May, and in this one there is not a whole lot interesting happening. I foolishly tried to use Thunderbolt on Tropius, and I am really not sure why I was doing that. Secret Power will deal much more damage, and is also more reliable. This time around, Pelipper decided to be annoying, so he had to protect for a while, and even though the rest of the team is evolved Pokémons, they end up all being defeated in a little time too. Now we can reach the top of Mount Pyre, where this lady gives us the magma emblem that we can use to enter the cave where Groudon is sleeping. By the time we reach the center, it's already too late, and Maxie awakened the legendary. Groudon cannot be so easily controlled though, and decided to run away. To vent out his frustration, Maxie ends up attacking us, and once again, even though this is annoying because of Intimidate, I have more than enough tools, aka a special move, to get through most of his team. For some reason, they did not want to use RNG moves on me this time, and I am very glad about it, since it made the fight a lot easier and quicker. Next, we have to infiltrate the Team Aqua base, and here we only find one of their admirals instead of the team leader. Once again, the fight against him is not too eventful. This time around, my Tiena is a bit more annoying with a scary face, but since I am quite fast, I still outspeed Golbat and one-shot it with Thunderbolt. Next is a fight that I was quite worried about, since I am not very tanky and this is a double fight, or better said, a 2v1 fight. The one redeeming hope is that Aipom can learn Shadow Ball, and in this generation it is physical, so with my decent attack I hopefully can take care of their Pokémons in the not too much time. To make a long story short, I did get hit quite a few times by Claydol with Earthquake, but it did not do that much damage, and I was eventually able to outlast their attacks and defeat all of their Pokémons. It took a while because of the potions, but once I was face to face with Claydol, it was only a matter of time until eventually they ran out of hyper potions and I was finally able to finish off Claydol and put it out of its misery. Unfortunately, that's not the end of the double fights on this island, as we have to take on the one with Steven against the Team Magma guys. If I have to be honest, I do not really know what happened in this fight. While I was playing, I sort of disassociated for a little while and just spammed A and used return over and over again. I'm not sure why, but this fight in particular really bothers me for some reason. It should be cool since you are fighting alongside the ex-champion, but I don't know why, it's just so boring. It might be the fact that you have faced this kind of teams with Mightyena, Crobat, Camerapt 1,000 times by now, but it's just not interesting. Also, unlike the previous one, it's quite easy to win, and unless you are using a very bad Pokemon or get very unlucky, you should be able to clear this in the first attempt. Metang even offers support with either Reflect or Light Screen. The only thing he is missing is a heal pulse or something like that to heal you. Anyway, once we are done with this, we have to use the newly acquired Dive HM to reach the seafloor cave, where we find Archie about to wake up Kyogre. In an attempt to stop him, we end up challenging him, and once again, this is more of the same really. I just spammed Thunderbolt over and over again, since it is not affected by the Mightyena's Intimidate, and it is also super effective on the rest of his team. I do get confused and slowed down, but fortunately that does not impact the fight too much, and we are done in a little time. Unfortunately, that's not enough to stop the legendary from waking up, and so with both of them active, the weather in the region is a complete mess. To fix this mess, we have to go ask Rayquaza for help, since he can use his ability to remove all weather effects. The ability is called Airlock, but I thought for the longest time it was called Clear Skies. Not sure why, but that seems a much more fitting name to me. After saving the world, we can finally take on the last gym, and this one should be kind of easy. First of all, we have Thunderbolt, which is super effective on most of his Pokémons, but considering the weak special attack and not stab, Return ends up being better most of the time. Of course, since we are not using a super strong Pokémon, we are unable to one-shot Kingdra, and so it has time to set up his double team and rest and whatever, so this ended up taking a bit longer than I wanted. After defeating Juan, we have finally acquired all of the badges of the region, and so we can use all of the TMs. By making use of those, we can enter the Victory Road, where we are stopped immediately by Wally. Here we have our first proper fight against him in the game, and his team is not that bad. There are a couple of threatening Pokémons, like Altaria or Magneton, since I am unable to one-shot them, and they could be annoying with either paralysis or confusion or other status effects. Fortunately for me, they did not decide to go for those, but instead tried to set up, which was not very smart on their part. Once those guys are defeated, the rest of the team quickly follows, and with that we have defeated the last major obstacle before the league. It might have been a good idea to prepare a bit more before entering, since I don't think I acquired all of the tools I could have used. Anyway, the first match is against Sidney, and of course he is extremely annoying because he leads off with a Mightyena. This guy will lower our attack with Intimidate, so Return will now not be able to one-shot his Pokémons, and this gives him more than enough turns to mess with me in many different ways. For example, Shiftry tries the double team strategy, but this time it does not work. Instead, Cacturn is the annoying one this time around, since it manages to use Leech Seed on me, and now my HP gets lower every turn. Fortunately, Return is enough to two-shot all of his Pokémons even after the heal, so this did not end up mattering too much, but as you can see, one extra turn could have been enough to defeat me. Next is Pheobe, and this is where things got kinda bad. I do not have enough damage to one-shot her lead, so she was able to curse me multiple times. I did get defeated quite a few times because of the curse, but eventually she was not smart and did not use curse for once. This was just what I needed to get a shot at the rest of her team. I also finished it off with a Thunderbolt, since Shadow Ball VPs can get kinda tight in this fight, especially if you cannot one-shot many of her Pokémons. Fortunately, the rest of the team is not that threatening, and even though they can live one turn, the damage they can do is not that crazy high, and eventually I was able to defeat the rest of her Pokémons. Next up is Glacia, and once again I am kinda worried, because I do not have any crazy strategies for her. Sure, I have a Thunderbolt, which is super effective on half of her team, but ultimately it is actually worse than just using Return. Unless I get very lucky and end up getting the paralysis, but that's only a 10% chance. As you might expect, Return is not quite enough to one-shot them, so this gives them enough turns to throw out a lot of attacks on me. While they do not do that much damage, and ultimately even less than I was expecting, it is still more than enough to chip me down consistently. That, coupled with the hail, can reduce my HP very quickly. Fortunately, I had just barely enough to leave a hit from Wall Rain, and so, against all odds, I was able to one-shot the third Elite Four member. Unfortunately, things do not get any easier from here, because our next fight is against Drake. I end up losing once to him, since his Pokémons are very tanky and I cannot defeat them in one shot, maybe not even if I get a crit. To overcome this fight, I ended up using a couple of rare candies to increase my level just a bit, so I had more attack, and that tiny increase, mixed with a bit more luck, was enough to let me get through this fight. Things were not easy though, it was still a bit of a pain. Fortunately, many of his Pokémons preferred to set up instead of attacking me, and this allowed me to reach his ace, Salamence, with quite a bit of HP left. Just barely enough to survive 2 hits from Dragon Claw, and that gave me enough turns to defeat the ace with Return, even if my attack was lowered by Intimidate. Lastly, we have the champion. Much like the rest of the league, this fight was quite hard, and I ended up losing once to Milotic. I could have tried him a couple more times, but I ended up using the last of the rare candies I had and increased my level to 85. The second time around, the fight did not start well with a freeze from Wailord, but fortunately I was able to thaw out quite fast, and from here the things went a bit better for me. Tentacruel was a one-shot, so no Hydro Pump for you, and Ludicolo was kind enough to also die in one hit, so no Leech Seed either. At this point, things were much better than in my previous attempt, but everything could crumble very fast if Milotic decided to be annoying. Especially because Wallace is kind of smart, and sent out Gyarados before his ace, so that my attack would be even lower. The Sea Snake is defeated by one Thunderbolt, but Milotic uses Toxic on me, and so he puts me on a timer. He tries to stall me with a recover, but fortunately return is just barely enough to get the KO, and so I can win before Toxic takes me down. So yeah, ultimately Aipom was not very fun or interesting to use. I can see why he is not that popular. He is just your average normal type, with nothing great going on for him. Sure, the design is a bit unique, but it does not stand out that much. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell and share it with a friend. If you have any comments, video ideas, feedback, suggestions or anything else, leave them down. And I'll see you next week. Bye!